membunuh di bawah Seksyen 302 dan pihak pendakwaan akan membuktikan bahawa pihak tertuduh telah terlibat sama ada secara bersama atau secara bersendiri in which the prosecution will table out all the available evidence inclusive of the statement, witness statement, okay, and witness testimony that will relate to the accused person such criminal liability. At the end of the day, we are going to prove to the court, okay, that we have achieved the prima facie and beyond reasonable doubt, okay, and the accused person should be convicted. So itu adalah sampel ucapan pembukaan oleh pihak prosecution. So there are some guidance in terms of how to make an opening statement by the prosecution, in which, for example, the prosecution must state clearly that the charge, state clearly and concisely regarding the charge and the offence in plain language. Okay, the prosecution should arrange in order with precision and clarity in terms of the facts that lead to the accused person. So the leading facts of the case within the chronological narrations, for example, inclusive of pieces of evidence in which the prosecution will rely upon. Okay, and the prosecution must state its proposed and intended to prove the particular facts from the charge. And also the important part is actually prosecution. There is nothing that should be said in the opening in anticipation of the defense that may be set up, or in other words, not to put OKT in tactical disadvantage which result to unfairness. This is from the case of BP versus Syahri Jusof 2007. Okay, so you can see this that the prosecution is very important for the prosecution to ensure that the opening statement must be made under section 179. Okay, and you can see from the case of PP versus Padmanabhan 2013, it is regarding case of Sosilawati. If you still remember, the cosmetic entrepreneur that has been murdered by her own lawyer. So in this particular situation, you can see that what in that case the judge say that the issue would be what would be the parameter. The prosecution would confine whether prosecution was confined to the perimeter of the opening statement, meaning that whether the prosecution would limit or confine themselves only to the matter of the facts during the opening statement. So the court say that in this particular situation, when the prosecution had departed from its opening statement, it will not be in any way impact its case adversely, nor it prejudice the defense case. So which means, if let's say that during the opening statement, the prosecution say that there is certain evidence, okay, that will be tendered, for example, just to prove the guilt of the accused person, okay, but after that, during the trial, there is an extra or additional evidence which had not in which it was not mentioned during the opening statement by the prosecution. Okay, so will it give any impact, adverse impact towards the case? So in the case of Sosilawati, the High Court judge say no. Okay, although the prosecution had departed in his opening statement by producing different evidence, for example, okay, it will not in any way impact its case adversely, and it will not prejudice the defense case. Okay, and the judge say that there was no law to confine the prosecution to the parameters of its opening statement, which was a rule of procedure of evidence and directory in nature rather than mandatory. Okay, it is directory in nature rather than mandatory in nature, although the word shall is used. Okay, so you have learned that in law there will be different impact. If the law states about the term shall or maybe, for example. So in this particular situation, it has been established that the word shall is not necessarily means mandatory. Okay, so the court say that the purpose of opening statement is merely to inform the court to the extent and expense of the evidence of the prosecution, and it may also be a notice to the defense on the likely evidence that they are to face. Therefore, prosecution is at liberty to venture beyond the opening statement if there are valid reasons to do so. Okay, so because somehow the court say that in conducting the trial, in some certain circumstances, there will be a situation in which the prosecution could not foresee that there will be an extra or additional evidence in terms of documentation, for example, evidence in terms of witnesses. There will be extra witnesses, for example, if let's say they initially prosecution call up 7 witnesses, suddenly during the 3rd and 4th witness, okay, it was revealed that there was another 2 additional witnesses, for example, in which it will make from 7 to 9 witnesses overall in all. So it is unfair, for example, to say that the prosecution must be must confine themselves towards the opening statement, because all in all, it is the burden of the prosecution at the end of the day. It is the burden of the prosecution at the end of the day to prove their case, whether at the level of prima facie or at the level of beyond reasonable doubt. So that is what happened in the case of PP versus Padmanabhan. Okay, and after that, if you yes.
Doktor, saya nak tanya, maksudnya masa opening statement tu, dia kena brief semua, brief dia punya evidence. Contoh kalau sebelum masa nak start trial tu dia ada maybe 20 witnesses, so dia kena brief, okay, saya ada 20 witnesses here which are gini. Macam tu ke?
Yeah. In the form of opening statement lah. Maksudnya dia akan bagi tahu what will be the available evidence for the prosecution, apakah bukti-bukti yang prosecution akan kemukakan, that the prosecution will tender in terms of documentation, in terms of which also include the witnesses that they are going to call. Okay, so even the list of witnesses actually had been revealed during the pre-trial case management. So you may ask me whether there will be a pre-trial case management for High Court or not. Yes, there will be a pre-trial case management in High Court. Okay, so during this particular at this stage, before prosecution panggil dia punya first witness, dia akan kemukakan opening statement sebagai pembuka kata mukadimah lah kan, yang akan menyatakan berkaitan isu tersebut. Okay. Alright. Then selepas after the prosecution finish with their opening statement, then as usual they are going to call witnesses for examination, to examine the witnesses, and this is in line with section 179 subsection 2, in which there will be a cross examination, re-examination, and examination in chief. And for this particular situation, you can refer to PP versus Gobinat Alfonso about this particular procedure of witness examination. Okay, right. Then for the conclusion of prosecution case, this can be referred to section 180, Section 180, procedure after conclusion of case for prosecution. Then if you can see that when the case for prosecution is concluded, the court shall consider whether the prosecution has made out a prima facie case against the accused person. And there are quite a number of cases that discuss about what is prima facie case, in which the first case would be Ha Tua Tau. This is a landmark case that has been referred to in Munusami versus PP, in which the court say that there must be an inherently incredible evidence, with accuracy, which is inherently incredible. What is inherently incredible later on has been developed in the case of PP versus Muhammad Amin. If you remember PP versus Muhammad Amin, this is regarding Al-Ma'unah case, the first case ever in Malaysia in which the accused person has been charged under the penal code and also federal constitution as a waging war against Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So this is the first case ever, kalau you masih ingat lagi, in which this is one of the case in which a group of people led by Muhammad Amin, they actually mencuri senjata, and the way they curi senjata tu is very unique, in which masa dia curi senjata tu, dia curi senjata daripada markas tentera, from army camp, dan pada masa dia masuk dekat army camp tu, pada masa waktu tu tengah malam, jadi dia orang berpakaian tentera, menaiki kereta yang ala-ala kereta tentera, dan mereka mengaku bahawa mereka adalah tentera pada masa itu, dan apabila dia masuk ke dalam kamp tersebut, dia telah mencuri senjata, dan apabila mereka mencuri senjata, mereka telah pun pergi ke satu tempat nama dia Bukit Jenalik, dan di atas itulah mereka mengatakan dan mereka demand certain terms in which they demanded from the government of Malaysia, and dalam kes tersebut ada beberapa orang polis telah ditembak mati, so mereka telah pun later on ditahan, to make it short, namun cerita dia agak unik, kalau misal kata you all baca berkaitan kes Al-Ma'unah ni, especially in one of the book, written by Encik Zabidi, former magistrate, as well as kalau you pernah dengar nama dia, buku tersebut tajuk dia Tersungkur di Pintu Syurga, jadi dia menceritakan berkaitan sebab Encik Zabidi, yes, Arkam, Encik Zabidi ni dulu adalah bekas legal advisor kepada Arkam, in which later on dia dah bertaubat, and after that dia jadi lawyer dan dia represented one of the OKT dalam kes Al-Ma'unah ini. Okay, so it's very interesting. Kalau misal kata ada kesempatan, itulah dia, sebab kita tak boleh face to face, kalau ada kesempatan saya akan jemput dia lah untuk bagi talk kepada you all. So buku dia tu dia menceritakan berkaitan antara lain bagaimana kering hati Ustaz Amin ni, in which his belief is actually kata orang tu more towards jihad lah kan. So but at the end of the day the court found them guilty, and after that all of them has been sentenced to death sentence. So even to the extent kalau nak cerita sikit lah kan, even the wife of the OKT, if I'm not mistaken 29 OKTs 29 OKT telah pun ke 28 OKT telah pun didakwa secara bersama. So apabila isteri mereka ni mendapati bahawa suami mereka akan dihukum dengan hukuman gantung, so mereka sangat sedih, dan dia approach Encik Zabidi ni untuk kata orang offer untuk jadi isteri. So itu boleh baca dalam buku tu nantilah kalau misalkan ada rezeki. So namun apa yang saya nak bagi tahu di sini adalah dalam kes tersebut Hakim Zulkifli Ahmad Makinuddin of the High Court, judge mengatakan bahawa there must be a credible evidence, the principle of credible evidence. Dan what are the credible evidence too, which mean whether it is safe or not for you to convict the accused person, based on that evidence alone, okay. If at the end of the day, if the accused person elect to remain silent, Okay, so whether that piece of evidence is so strong, okay, which is incredibly accurate, according not just to the charge sheet, but also to the totality, of the prosecution evidence during the prosecution case. Okay, so this is very important, in which the judge say that. Then timbullah beberapa kes yang kemudiannya, termasuklah kes Loh Koi Chai, yang telah pun dirujuk di dalam kes Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim nombor 3, which has been affirmed di dalam case of PP versus Muhammad Razi oleh Mahkamah Persekutuan, bahawa you need to have a maximum evaluation. Okay, what is maximum evaluation? It is not a BRD. So at the end of the day, this lead to the amendment to subsection 4 of section 180, in which it spells out that for the purpose of this section, a prima facie case is made out against the accused person where the prosecution has adduced credible evidence. The word credible evidence is there, proving each ingredient of the offence, which if unrebutted or unexplained would warrant a conviction. Okay, so the first part of credible evidence, the legislature follow the case of Al-Ma'unah. And the second part, which is if unrebutted or unexplained would warrant a conviction, it is based on the series of case of Loh Koi Chai, Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, and also PP versus Muhammad Razi Abu Bakar, which is actually related to maximum evaluation. Okay, so you can read the long history of what is prima facie case, but for academic purposes, of course, you can read. But for the practical, in practice, later on, you can see that actually the issue of prima facie has been settled. It has been settled. But for the purpose of submission later on, you can have the mock trial. You need to submit at the end of prosecution case that the prosecution whether has successfully proved their case at the prima facie level or not successful in their in the proving of their case. Okay, so what happened if at the end of the day the court say that look, the evidence is more towards the other element of offences rather than the offences stated in the charge, so the charge can be amended, and this you can see from the case of PP versus Siddiq bin Abdullah. Okay, the same procedure with section 173 F of for the subordinate court. Okay, right? Okay, if let's say that the court say that the prosecution had successfully proved their case at the prima facie, so then section 181 mentioned about the defense case, meaning that the defense will be called to give to produce their defense, to forward their defense. Okay, so what will be the situation here? You can refer to subsection 1, in which when the accused person is called upon to enter on his defense, he or his advocate may open his case, stating the facts or law on which he intends to rely and making such comment as he thinks necessarily on the evidence for the prosecution. Okay, so as well as prosecution has a right to have their own opening statement. Okay, the defense also has their own right to make a comment. Okay, and to stating the facts. Okay, but we are not we didn't it is not we don't call that we do not call that as a defense opening statement, but we call that as a statement by the defense in making the comment which is necessarily on the evidence for the prosecution. Okay, then there will be three options still, three options for the accused person. Yeah, the first option is accused elect to remain silent. You can see from the case of Loh Koi Chai, and that is the reason why case Loh Koi Chai has been adopted even at the level of federal court, and in the case of PP versus Razi Abu Bakar, because if let's say the accused remains silent, whether it is safe or not, so the credible evidence, whether the evidence can stand on its own, okay, will come into picture. Okay, so The second option would be the accused person can elect to give sworn statement. Okay. But before that, if you were to refer to section 181(1), there is a proviso. First is the defense, when called to enter his defense, must make a statement or a comment towards the prosecution evidence. Then he may then examine his witnesses, if any, and after their cross-examination and re-examination in any, and may sum up his case. Yeah. Okay, meaning that if let's say at the end of the defense case, the defense will sum up by way of submission to close his case. Provided always that if any accused elect to be called as a witness, his evidence shall be taken before that of other witness for the defense, and provided also that any accused person who elect to be called as a witness may be cross-examined on behalf of any other accused person. Okay, so in this particular situation, you can see that if the accused person normally if accused person being called to enter his defense, he will be the first person who will be a witness. Okay, he is the first person who will be the witness for the defense case. Okay, so this is very important. Then after that, the accused person shall be allowed to examine any witnesses not previously named by him under the provision of CPC if that witness is in attendance. Okay, so this is the provision under section 181. Okay, the provision under section 181, in which at the end of the day, when the defense case close their case, they do not have any other evidence or witnesses, so they are going to close their case and they will sum up his case in a way of either written or oral submission to the court, to say that they successfully had raised a doubt towards the evidence of the prosecution. Okay, and then the prosecution will have a right to reply for the whole case under section 182. So at the end of defense case means that at the end of the case. Okay, at the end of the defense case means that at the end of the case. This principle you need to remember. Okay, so in terms of this, meaning that under section 182, in all cases, the officers conducting the prosecution shall have the right to reply on the whole case, whether the accused adduces evidence or not. Okay, so if let's say that, what happens if the accused person elect to remain silent? Will there be any submission at the end of the defense case? The answer is yes. If let's say that the accused person has been called to enter his defense, and the accused person say, look, I do not want to give any evidence, I want to remain silent. Okay, because somehow they would like to try themselves, they would like to try to see whether the evidence from the prosecution is so strong. Okay, because of the standard of proof at the end of the defense are different. At the end of the defense case, the evidence must be beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, must be beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, not prima facie. Okay, not prima facie. Okay, right. Okay, so that is for section 181 and section 182.
Doktor,
Yes.
kalau elect to remain silent tu maksudnya dia dipanggil, dia ada choice untuk dipanggil sebagai memberi testimoni tapi dia tak nak, macam tu ya?
Yes, maknanya dia tak nak bela diri dia lah, dia nak diam je.
Oh, dia macam opposite to give statement lah, whether sworn ke unsworn ke, macam tu.
Yes, kalau misal kata dia elect to give statement, a sworn statement, maknanya dia akan memberikan keterangan secara bersumpah. Masalahnya kalau dia elect to remain silent, meaning that dia tak nak bercakap apa-apa. Bila dia tak nak bercakap apa-apa, maka it depends on the prosecution. Depends on the court to evaluate the evidence so far by the prosecution.
Doktor, kalau yang doktor ada kat sini 3 options tu yang mana ya? options?
Satu lagi option adalah dia boleh bagi keterangan secara tidak dia boleh memberi keterangan secara tidak bersumpah. Yes, unsworn statement.
Okay.
Itu you can refer to section 173, but it is not stated in section 181. But it does not mean that the right is not there. Okay. Because it is similar if we to refer to section 173.
Okay.
Okay. Alright. Any other question so far? Ada apa-apa soalan lain? Alright, kalau tak ada soalan lain, kita tengok what happened at the conclusion of trial. At the conclusion of trial, what does it mean by beyond reasonable doubt? Okay, there is actually amendment under section 182A. 182A, if you read this, if you were to read the procedure at the conclusion of the trial based on that particular provision, it states that the prosecution must prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. And the important keyword that you need to remember is shall consider all available evidence. Shall consider all evidence adduced before it. And in all cases, it means that the evidence at entirety, all evidence. Okay, what does it mean by all evidence? In the case of PP versus Muhammad Rosidi Mat Amin, if you were to read in that case, the court say that the word all evidence also include caution statement. Okay, also include caution statement under section 112 and under section 113. Okay, and federal court in the case of Mat versus PP and also PP versus Muhammad Razi Abu Bakar mentioned that at entirety or shall consider all evidence, it must be based on the maximum evaluation. Okay, it must be on the maximum evaluation. Okay, and in one of these cases, latest case, in the case of Sayyida Lee Reza versus PP, okay, actually nama dia panjang lagi, so this is involving Iranian, orang Iran kena telah pun ditangkap, accused person telah pun ditangkap dan didakwa di atas pertuduhan mengedar dadah, mengedar dadah under section 39B. So dalam kes tersebut, OKT dia mengatakan bahawa ada seorang ni bernama Ali Zadeh. So dia kata Ali Zadeh ni sebenarnya yang mengedar dadah tersebut, sedangkan dia OKT hanyalah memegang dadah tersebut, sebab dia kata dia tak tahu itu adalah dadah dan ada pihak lain. Jadi bila perkara ni sampai dekat Mahkamah Tinggi mengatakan bahawa oh, there is just a bare evidence from you. You just want to accept your you just want to escape your liability to say that look, there is Ali Zadeh over there, the third person, in which Ali Zadeh ni not being called, tidak dipanggil untuk memberikan keterangan. Okay, so dia jatuhkan hukuman dan OKT telah pun dihukum dengan hukuman gantung, convicted and sentenced. Jadi bila OKT merayu di Mahkamah Rayuan, so Mahkamah Rayuan mengatakan bahawa Mahkamah Tinggi ni telah tersilap, kerana Mahkamah Tinggi sepatutnya bila dikatakan BRD, beyond reasonable doubt tu, Mahkamah Tinggi kena consider all evidence at entirety, secara keseluruhan. Dan ini melibatkan keterangan yang menyatakan wujudnya manusia bernama Ali Zadeh ini. Okay, so sepatutnya dalam kes tersebut perlulah dinyatakan, sebab apabila OKT menyatakan adanya orang pihak lain yang bernama Ali Zadeh dan pihak OKT dan pihak prosecution tak kemukakan Ali Zadeh ini. Okay, you remember the presumption of adverse inference 114G, mahkamah kena ambil kira that particular presumption as well. Okay, walaupun dia kata dalam kes melibatkan dadah adalah kes strict liability. Okay, strict liability. Sebab you guys kena faham walaupun dia strict liability, walaupun you need not have any knowledge, okay, but in terms of you want to prove the mere possession, you must make sure that it is clearly that the OKT masa dia pegang dadah tersebut, it was within his own control. Okay, sebab kalau you ada beberapa kes yang melibatkan kes dadah ini. Even dadah itu ketika polis menyerbu dadah tersebut even dalam poket OKT. Dadah itu dalam poket OKT. Tetapi OKT dilepaskan daripada pertuduhan sebab mahkamah mengatakan bahawa the prosecution tidak dapat membuktikan bahawa bagaimana dadah itu boleh masuk dalam poket OKT. Okay. Ada beberapa kes juga. Sebab itu satu lagi saya nak bagi tahu kalau misal kata ada student-student ni menyewa dia tak duduk dalam college, dia menyewa kat luar. Ialah menyewa 3-4 orang. Bilik ada 3 sebagai contoh Dan ada beberapa kes ada satu kes tu di mana apabila OKT ni dia masuk dia bukan duduk pun dengan kawan dia. Dia masuk sebab kawan dia kata jom pergi rumah. So dia pun pergi rumah tu dan kemudian dia masuk dalam rumah tersebut. Bila dia masuk dalam rumah tersebut dia tak buat apa-apa pun. Dia hanya duduk saja dalam rumah tu. Tiba-tiba polis serbu dan polis menjumpai sebungkus ganja yang diletakkan di atas pintu bilik nombor 1. Bilik ada 3 kan. Di atas pintu. Dia selitkan dekat atas pintu bilik nombor 1. Okay. Dan oleh kerana polis jumpa sebungkus dadah tersebut the whole penyewa dan penduduk di dalam rumah tersebut ditangkap, termasuklah hamba Allah OKT yang datang. Dia tak semena-mena datang, dia nak melawat kawan dia je, dia pun kena tangkap. Jadi kemudian bukan setakat orang yang menyewa, tuan punya rumah tu pun sekali disiasat oleh pihak polis dan mereka semua didakwa di mahkamah. Okay. Jadi itu sebab kita katakan bahawa it is very important walaupun you must remember any offences di bawah Dangerous Drug Act knowledge atau mens rea is not important. Whether you know or not that is drug, that is not important. The most important part is whether you have the drug with you at that particular of time. Okay. Sebab ini berlaku banyak kali berlaku. Sebagai contoh you naik kereta api. Sebab tu kalau misal kata you naik kereta api ataupun you naik pengangkutan awam, termasuklah you dekat airport. Kenapa ada orang kata jangan tinggalkan beg secara bersendirian? Okay, jangan tinggalkan beg tanpa ada orang jaga. Sebab dah ada banyak kes yang mana bila you tinggalkan beg, you nak pergi toilet, perut pun sakit sangat kan. Tinggalkan beg kat luar pintu je, tak ada masalah, sekejap je kan. Bila you masuk, you keluar, you bawa beg pergi dekat immigration ataupun polis punya checkpoint, tiba-tiba you kena tangkap. You pun tak tahu kenapa dan tiba-tiba dalam beg you ada dadah. Okay, dia sama ada beg tertukar ataupun ada orang masukkan dadah tersebut sebab dia nak escape. Okay, so this is actually benda-benda yang berlaku. And in terms of that, the court under section 182A must consider all evidence at entirety. Okay, and after that kalau misal kata mahkamah menyatakan bahawa okay, prosecution had proved their case beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, the court will then move into section 183 to convict and to sentence the accused person according by law. Dan kalau misal kata the court find that the prosecution had not proved its case beyond reasonable doubt, then the court shall record an order of acquittal under section 182A subsection 3. Okay, so this is also very important. You must see first section 182 section 182A1. Okay, after that section 182A2, in which if the impact of the court, if the court find that prosecution has proved its case beyond reasonable doubt, okay, and the court shall find the accused guilty and he may be convicted on it. Or number 3, if the court find that the prosecution has not proved its case beyond reasonable doubt, the court shall record an order of acquittal. And then followed by section 183, if the accused person is convicted, the court shall pass the sentence according to the law. Okay, but before the court pass the sentence according to the law, the court need to consider section 183A, victim impact statement. Okay, whether it is in oral or written form, okay, the court need to assess, need to request. For example, in the case of, in section 183A, before the court passes sentence according to law under section 183, the court shall, upon the request of the victim of the offence or the victim family, call upon the victim or a member of the victim's family to make statement on the impact of the offence on the victim or his family. And where the victim or a member of the victim family is for any reason unable to attend after being called by the court may at its discretion admit any written statement of the victim or a member of the victim family. So victim impact statement can be either oral or written form. And this is very important because it will give court sense of what victim and his family went through, whether it is physically, emotionally, and economically. Okay, physically, emotionally, you can see from the from sexual offences case. Okay, sexual offences case. Yeah. Economically, you can see from case melibatkan case rompak, case samun. Okay, so as a result of offenders' transgression into their private lives, and to pass the appropriate sentence accordingly. So you need to cross-refer with section 173M proviso. Section 173M proviso. Proviso di bawah section 173M2. Okay, 173M2 dekat bawah tu dia ada proviso. Okay, in which provided that before the court passes sentence, the court shall upon the request. Maknanya sama juga proviso dia. Di bawah section M2 dengan section 183A. Okay, so this is actually to allow victim during the decision making process on sentencing to describe to the trial judge the impact of the crime. Okay, so far we do not have any case regarding section 183A. Okay, but we have one of these case, in the case of Goh Kim Kiat 2011, in which dalam case ini OKT ni dia run religious institution and he misappropriate religious institution for his own use and taking advantage of the trust confided to him, in which dia juga telah merogol victim. Okay, so victim was traumatized. Case ini was from the session court. So on appeal, the High Court actually accepted the victim punya statement, the victim impact statement, dan High Court telah pun mengubah keputusan Mahkamah Session dengan mengenakan hukuman yang lebih berat kepada OKT. Okay, so this is very important. Bila kita bincang tentang victim impact statement, you can see that this is the process before, sebelum menjatuhkan hukuman. So atas permintaan, maksud that the court will ask, the court may ask whether the victim would like to give or to hand in their victim impact statement. Okay, so mahkamah akan memanggil untuk dan kemudian akan melihat berkaitan impak kesalahan tersebut sebelum menjatuhkan hukuman. And after that, apakah bentuk-bentuk kandungan dalam pernyataan victim impact statement? It can be either the detail of traumatized ataupun kecederaan yang dialami. Okay. Kerugian ekonomi ataupun kerosakan harta, for example. Bantahan terhadap hukuman yang dicadangkan, for example. Kesan psikologi dan lain-lain perkara. Okay. So this is if you to ask me, adakah ini berbentuk mitigation? Ini bukan berbentuk mitigation sebab mitigation will come from the accused person. So adakah ini berbentuk aggravated? Yes, it can be aggravated factor, but this is what we call as the third voice that need to be heard by the judge. The second voice is actually from the accused person. The first voice from the accused person. The second voice adalah from the prosecution. The third voice adalah from the victim, so that the victim can take part. Okay. So apart from that, we need to discuss about the High Court trial under SOSMA as well. So under SOSMA ni dia tak berapa apa tu kata orang, under SOSMA because of the nature of the act itself, which is highly on the security measures. So you can see that they are not much in terms of trial. Maksudnya not much section that you need to remember, and it is quite unique in nature. For example, you can see under section 14.1, giving evidence, the accused, the witnesses can refuse to expose identity, so the inquiry can be held in camera. Lepas tu, evidence can be given not visible to the accused person. Even the accused person tak boleh kata lah, under human right he should know siapa saksi. Sebab kalau saksi mengatakan bahawa dia takut, mana taknya kalau misal kata saksi itu melibatkan SB ke apa, macam dalam kes PP Hassan Haji Ali Basri, siapa yang nak bagi keterangan kan? Semua takkan bagi keterangan kan? So dalam keterangan-keterangan yang diberikan, dia lebih kepada evidential aspect. Sebagai contoh, evidence can be given not visible to the accused person. Maksudnya masa accused memberi keterangan, tidak semestinya OKT itu berada di dalam mahkamah, ataupun keterangan tersebut akan diberi melalui dalam kamera, ataupun kalau misalnya kata saksi mengatakan, oh nanti dia boleh kenal saya daripada suara saya, maka voice of the witness may not be heard by the accused and also by the counsel to that certain of extent. Okay. Even the court may disallow any question as to the identity of the witness. Okay. And the protection towards the identity of the witness. So this is what happened in the case of PP versus Hassan Haji Ali Basri. Okay. In which the court interpreted the word protected witness. Okay. And the reason why the witness need to be protected. Okay. So in terms of admissibility of evidence also, you can see that under SOSMA, kalau statement by accused by the person who already dead or who cannot be found or incapable of giving evidence, still can be admitted under section 18. And the evidence of privileged communication, I must tell you that kalau misal kata ada keterangan di antara suami dan isteri, itu dalam undang-undang namanya privileged communication. Meaning that kalau isteri dia dipanggil untuk memberi keterangan dan isteri dia boleh menolak, menjawab apa-apa soalan yang berkaitan dengan apa yang telah dimaklumkan kepada dia oleh suami dia. Sebab itu namanya privileged communication. Okay. Tetapi dalam SOSMA, privileged communication tidak terpakai. So you tak boleh kata, oh it is under privileged communication, saya tak nak jawab soalan tu. No, you kena jawab soalan tu. Dan satu lagi features ya di dalam SOSMA adalah conviction. Kalau misal kata OKT boleh dijatuhkan hukuman even dengan keterangan daripada seorang kanak-kanak, walaupun kanak-kanak itu memberikan keterangan tanpa bersumpah dan kanak-kanak itu tidak membawa sebarang keterangan sokongan, ia tetap boleh menyebabkan OKT disabitkan dengan kesalahan di bawah SOSMA. Okay. So untuk melihat di antara perbezaan SOSMA dan sebagainya, maksudnya perbezaan di antara summary trial, subordinate court dengan high court trial dan juga trial under SOSMA, you may look into page 487 sampailah page 491. Okay, from page 487 sampai page 491, in which nanti kita akan discuss semasa tutorial. Alright. So dia ada beberapa features kat sini yang mana high court dengan summary trial ada, tetapi dalam SOSMA dia tak kata apa-apa. So isunya adalah bila tidak berkata apa-apa, adakah CPC terpakai dalam kes-kes melibatkan SOSMA? Okay. Adakah dalam situasi ini CPC terpakai as a general application because of that particular provision tidak ada dalam SOSMA? Okay. So perkara-perkara yang lain melibatkan, you boleh lihatlah sama ada section 51A terpakai. Pada saya itu lebih kepada investigation under SOSMA, in which saya tidak mahu sentuh lah ya, sebab ia telah pun dibincangkan semasa SEM 1 ya. Contoh melibatkan sensitive information, power to intercept communication, power of arrest and detention. Sebab dia adalah berbeza ya. Yang saya hanya sentuh adalah melibatkan trial procedure in perspective ya. Trial procedure in perspective ya. Dan kita akan bincang ya trial procedure in perspective ini di dalam tutorial ya, di dalam sesi tutorial. So terima kasih. Ada apa-apa soalan? Itu sahaja untuk hari ini. Ada apa-apa soalan?
Doktor.
Ya, saya
nak tanya yang victim impact statement tu, dia mandatory ke is up to the family nak bagi ke tak?
Mandatory ataupun tidak, jawapan dia adalah tidak mandatory. Tetapi jika hakim minta, kenalah family tu bagi. Sebab you kena faham ini adalah family kepada mangsa, bukan family kepada OKT. Victim impact statement, nama pun victim, dia adalah family kepada mangsa ataupun mangsa itu sendiri, bukan daripada OKT. So, kalau you baca section 183A, the court may upon request. So maknanya dia tidak wajib bagi semua kes, tetapi mahkamah boleh meminta lah. Apabila mahkamah minta tu maknanya family kena bagilah. Tapi kalau family kata tak apalah, saya redha dan sebagainya tu, maka terpulang kepada family member lah dia nak bagi ataupun tidak. Dan kalau dia nak bagi itu, tidak semestinya dia bagi dengan menyatakan tidak semestinya dia bagi dengan kehadiran dia di mahkamah ya. Sebab dia kadang-kadang kan traumatized ya. Ahli keluarga masih lagi dalam keadaan terkejut ya. Contoh dalam kes Teo Beng Hok ya. Yang mana anak dia sepatutnya bukanlah merupakan orang yang sepatutnya suspek ya, hanya memberikan keterangan kemudian dijumpai mati ya di bangunan SPRM ya. Jadi sampai sekarang ya, cerita tu adalah daripada tahun 2011 sampai sekarang ya, family member dia mengatakan bahawa dia are having a difficulty ya, kesukaran ya. Jadi sama juga dalam kes-kes melibatkan Hanif Basri okay? Tapi sebelum itu adalah sebelum pindaan kepada section 183A. So kalau family member rasa mereka tak boleh datang sebab dia tak nak tengok muka OKT, dia boleh untuk memberikan keterangan secara bertulis. So nanti prosecution akan hubungi pihak keluarga mangsa bagi tujuan tersebut. Okey, boleh? Adakah saya menjawab soalan?
Okey, doktor, thank you.
Sama-sama.
Doktor?
Ya, saya.
Kalau maksudnya 183A ni impact statement ni kalau ada request daripada victim ataupun victim's family kan?
Iyalah dia boleh jadi upon request daripada mereka ataupun daripada pihak mahkamah.
Oh, okey.
Okey. Right. Ada soalan lain? Guys, saudara-saudara sekalian, dah banyak tanya ni. Saudara tak ada nak tanya ke?
InsyaAllah tak ada, doktor.
InsyaAllah tak ada. Okey, alhamdulillah. Baik, kalau tak ada apa-apa soalan, terima kasih kerana bersama pada hari ini. Mari saya tengok kehadiran. Kehadiran 44 orang je. Memang 44 Oh sorry, saya confused dengan ADR. ADR 90 lebih kan. Alright, thank you sebab sudi hadir ya. Dan selamat bercuti. Okay, selamat bercuti. Apabila naik nanti tutorial minggu lagi 1, kita akan bincang berkaitan dengan perbezaan ya di antara summary trial, high court trial dan juga SOSMA. Okay. Then up until then, stay safe. Dan betul, tak ada apa-apa soalan lagi? Saya buka kali terakhir. Ada apa-apa soalan?
One question, doktor.
Alright, okay.
Sila-sila.
Doktor bukan after mid semester doktor nak present yang half lagi yang 173 tu.
Ya, betul. Memang betul. Akan ada presentation tentang lagi satu tu. Then after that kita akan buat tentang kita akan buat tentang apa?
Boleh.
Right? Okay.
Okay, terima kasih doktor.
Right.
My question is, let's say kalau macam prosecution tu jumpa additional evidence during the defense case, so bila dia nak tender additional evidence tu kena tunggu habis defense case ke masa tu juga?
Wah, soalan yang baik tu. Kalau nak diikutkan, kalau ada additional evidence, prosecution dah tidak ada avenue lain untuk tender dia punya evidence, okay? Dia hanya boleh tender evidence yang baru tersebut melalui saksi pihak OKT. Kalau OKT nak panggil saksi tersebut. Okay? Ataupun dalam keadaan begitu, katalah kalau dia ada keterangan tambahan, dan dia kena minta mahkamah untuk memanggil saksi pendakwaan, sebab pendakwaan ada tambahan saksi. Dan bila perkara tersebut berlaku, maknanya dia kena patah balik kepada proses kes pendakwaan tadi. Okey, maksudnya saksi dia akan melalui proses cross examination daripada OKT. Okey, dan dia kena sum up mengatakan bahawa ada prima facie. So dia akan, maksudnya dia berpatah balik. Dan proses tu akan berpatah balik. Sebab itu prosecution kena betul-betul rancang kes semasa kes prosecution. Okay? Sebab dalam kes-kes biasa agak sukar untuk mahkamah nak bagi saksi, panggil saksi dia, sedangkan sekarang ni dah tahap kes defense, kan? Sebab bila panggil kes prosecution, maknanya you kena patah balik kepada kes prosecution tadi. You kena berpatah balik dia punya prosedur tu.
Faham means starting from zero lah doktor.
Dia kena, bukan start daripada zero, maknanya dia kena patah balik. Maknanya kalau tadi asal dia ada 7 witnesses, lepas tu kes dia dah tutup. Bila kes dia dah tutup, OKT akan dipanggil. Bila kes OKT tiba-tiba kata prosecution kata, oh saya ada lagi 2 saksi contoh, kan. So dia ada 2 option. Sama ada 2 saksi ni dia offer dekat OKT untuk OKT panggil sebagai saksi OKT, dan nanti prosecution akan cross. Ataupun dia akan minta dengan court supaya dipanggil saksi prosecution ini, okay, dipanggil saksi prosecution itu supaya saksi prosecution itu memberikan keterangan. Dalam kes ini selalunya mahkamah jarang akan membenarkan perkara tersebut berlaku.
Berat juga tanggungjawab dia.
Berat. Sebab prosecution need to ensure dia ada buat plan. Dia buat plan, layout plan, apa keterangan yang nak dikemukakan, siapa saksi dan sebagainya. Okay.
Thank you doktor.
Okay, ada soalan lain? Ada apa-apa soalan lain? Yes, ada apa-apa soalan lain?
Tak ada doktor.
Alright, kalau tak ada, okay, sekian saja untuk hari ini. So, selamat bercuti, stay safe, okay. Semoga kita jumpa lagi 2 minggu, okay. Right, sekian. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, doktor.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you.